At the University of Florida, we received a donation of print serials that we're kind of dubbing our Haitian Serials Project, just because to make it simple. Um, there are over 3,000 issues of serials altogether. It was roughly 2,000 and change of newspapers and about 1,000 issues of other serialized materials like magazines, weekly reports and things like that. Um, it was an interesting donation to acquire at first. We didn't want to say no to it. I didn't want to say no to it. I've been working with newspapers very closely for over a decade now. Um, and hearing about this treasure trove, couldn't say no. The newspapers, there's roughly 28 titles or so, with about half of those coming from Haiti and the other half coming from the US and France. Out of the other serialized content, there's 117 titles. Most of those, about 60% are from Haiti, and the other 40 were published in the US, France, or in another country. Um, this has been a complex project for multiple things that I won't get into, but just to give you a sense, it's been having to, figure out cataloging records. Some of these, like Le Noveliste, is well known and has records. Some of them are smaller publications, so they have either no records at all or have some, but have needed extensive edits. And then the collection also came with mold. So it's another issue that we're dealing with in terms of preservation and getting the content digitized, but that's not the topic of today. Um, to give you a little bit more sense of what the content is, as I mentioned, it kind of ranges in where they're being published, what language it's being published in, as well. Most of it is in French, some of it is in English. There's Haitian Creole included. Um, as we're continuing to look through, we're, potentially going to find more, but that's at least the majority of the content at the moment. The other interesting thing about this content, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want to say no, is the publication date range in which most of these materials were published in. And most of the materials were published between the 1970s and the 2000s, which is a critical historical period for Haiti. And so couldn't say no to losing something like this, especially knowing that the majority of the materials are not readily available, not readily archived. And so it's led to these conversations with Perry. There's also been considerations for like the sensitivity of the material, which could be a whole other topic as well. But I've had extensive conversations with Perry and will continue to do so in thinking about how we handle assessing the copyright nature of this content, because it is, again, complex, not just an amount of the materials, but also in the condition and the content itself and having to work through it. So we're working in batches. We're getting our first batch digitized at the moment. What I'm going to do is hopefully share my screen and show you just a snippet of some of the stuff that we've been working on. And Perry, feel free to chime in too. But essentially, what we've got going on is a worksheet where we created this inventory based off of the materials that we received to get a sense again of titles, content, publication place, what was already digitized, what has not been, and kind of we're assessing gaps on where we can fill in. And then also working through then in preparation, as I mentioned, because there is a lot of material working in batches. And so Harry and I worked really closely on this part where it was like trying to figure out are these papers still in print? What can we do about that? Or is there stuff that's already in DLOC? Can we work with our existing partners who are contributing this material? If not, how do we assess? And so this is just a little bit of a glimpse into our working brains as we kind of try to document what that looks like. Perry, do you want to take over?
Yeah, and I'll just add just a tiny bit for this last minute, just to reiterate some of what you said. I think many of these papers are out of print. It would be almost impossible to track down the original publisher, or in many cases, the company that may or may not have inherited rights from the original publisher over time, because many of these are published over many, many decades. It's also really important, as Melissa was getting at, to for DLOC, to be not only legally but also ethically a good actor. We don't want to do anything that would ever undermine the commercial value of papers, or especially those that are still in operation and in print. While we would love to share everything publicly that we can, and that partners want to share, we also are very aware that there are vendors and paid databases and websites where especially newspapers are available. And that might be a source of income for some folks at these different papers. So that's one of the things we considered as well. But overall, it's been something where it's been very easy to say yes to digitizing because of preservation. Copyright, almost every country has some kind of provision for preservation of materials. That doesn't necessarily extend to sharing publicly online, but at the very least, we've been able to start with the preservation through digitization.